Have you ever heard of Black Wall Street? It was a place of incredible prosperity, a beacon of hope and success built by Black Americans in the early 20th century. Imagine a thriving 35-block district filled with beautiful homes, churches, schools, libraries, hospitals, and hundreds of successful businesses. From grocery stores and movie theaters to luxury shops and law offices. This wasn't a dream. This was Greenwood, a neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was so prosperous, so self-sufficient, that it earned the nickname Black Wall Street. But what if I told you that in less than 24 hours, it was all wiped off the map? And for decades, the story was buried, intentionally erased from our history books. This is the story of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, one of the single worst incidents of racial violence in American history, and it's a story you were probably never taught in school. Let's go back to the early 1900s. Oklahoma had recently become a state, and Tulsa was booming thanks to an oil rush. It was the oil capital of the world. Amidst the harsh segregation laws of the Jim Crow era, Black Tulsans, many of whom were descendants of those who had survived the Trail of Tears or were seeking opportunity after the Civil War, carved out their own thriving community. Led by visionary entrepreneurs like O.W. Gurley and J.B. Stratford, they built Greenwood from the ground up. The dollar circulated within the community dozens of times before it ever left, creating a powerful, self-sustaining local economy. Doctors, lawyers, real estate agents, pilots. Greenwood had it all. It was the living embodiment of Black excellence and a powerful counter-narrative to the racist ideologies of the time. But this success bred resentment. In the deeply segregated and racially tense climate of Tulsa, the prosperity of Greenwood was seen by some in the white community not as an inspiration, but as a threat. The Ku Klux Klan was experiencing a resurgence across the country, and racial tensions were a powder keg waiting for a spark. That spark came on May 30th, 1921. A 19-year-old black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland took an elevator in the Drexel building downtown. The elevator operator was a 17-year-old white girl named Sarah Page. The exact details of what happened inside that elevator remain unclear. Some accounts say he tripped and grabbed her arm to steady himself, causing her to scream. Whatever the cause, the authorities were called. Dick Rowland was arrested the next day on May 31st and taken to the courthouse jail. Rumors began to fly. A sensationalist front-page story in the Tulsa Tribune newspaper that afternoon ran with the headline, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in elevator," and reportedly included an editorial that encouraged a lynching. The story spread like wildfire through the white community. That evening, a mob of hundreds of white men began to gather outside the courthouse, demanding that the sheriff hand over Dick Rowland. They wanted to lynch him. Fearing the worst, a group of about 25 armed black men, many of them World War I veterans, went to the courthouse to offer their help in protecting Rowland. The sheriff assured them the situation was under control and sent them away. But as the white mob grew larger and more aggressive, a group of about 75 armed black men returned. They were met by a hostile crowd that now numbered nearly 2,000. An altercation broke out. A white man tried to disarm a black veteran. A shot was fired, and then all hell broke loose. The smaller group of black defenders, heavily outnumbered, retreated back to Greenwood. But the white mob didn't disperse. Fueled by rage and armed with weapons looted from local hardware stores and pawn shops, they became an invading army. They pursued the black men into Greenwood, and what began as a standoff transformed into a full-scale assault on the entire community. Throughout the night of May 31st and into the morning of June 1st, the violence escalated horrifically. The mob, which grew to include thousands of white Tulsans, some of whom were even deputized and armed by city officials, began to systematically loot and burn Greenwood to the ground. They went from house to house, from business to business, destroying everything in their path. Eyewitnesses described a horrifying scene of chaos and terror. Families were dragged from their homes and beaten. People were shot in the streets as they tried to flee. The violence wasn't just on the ground. Private planes, some reportedly owned by local oil companies, were seen flying over Greenwood, dropping firebombs, turpentine balls or dynamite sticks, onto buildings, turning the neighborhood into an inferno. The fires were so intense they could be seen for miles. The local fire department arrived, but instead of putting out the flames, some firefighters either joined the mob or were turned away at gunpoint. Greenwood's own fire station was among the first buildings destroyed. By the time the Oklahoma National Guard arrived on the morning of June 1st and declared martial law, it was too late. Greenwood was gone. Over 35 square blocks lay in smoldering ruins. More than 1,200 homes were destroyed. Churches, schools, a hospital, the library, all turned to ash. The economic heart of Black Wall Street, with its hundreds of businesses, was utterly decimated. The human cost was even more devastating. For decades, the official death toll was reported to be around 36. But we now know this was a deliberate downplaying of the tragedy. Historians and researchers, based on eyewitness accounts, funeral home records, and mass grave investigations, estimate that as many as 300 people were killed. Most of them were black residents. In the aftermath, thousands of black Tulsans were left homeless. More than 6,000 were rounded up by National Guardsmen and held in internment camps at the convention hall and fairgrounds, some for several days. They were only released if a white person vouched for them. No one from the white mob was ever arrested or held accountable for the murders, the looting, or the arson. Not a single person. In fact, the blame was often shifted onto the black community for instigating the riot. Insurance claims filed by black property owners were overwhelmingly denied, with companies citing riot clauses in their policies. The promise of a rebuilt Greenwood never materialized. The economic and generational wealth that had been built over years was erased in a single day. And then, perhaps the most insidious part of the tragedy began. The cover-up. The Tulsa Race Riot, as it was initially called, was systematically erased from public record and collective memory. The inflammatory newspaper article that helped incite the mob disappeared from archives. Official reports minimized the death toll and the scale of destruction. For generations, the event wasn't taught in Oklahoma schools. It wasn't mentioned in history textbooks. Survivors were often too traumatized or too afraid to speak about it. It became a hidden history, a dark secret whispered within families but unknown to the wider world. It wasn't until the late 1990s, when a state commission was formed to investigate the massacre, that the truth began to resurface on a national scale. The 2001 commission report officially acknowledged the scale of the tragedy and recommended reparations for survivors and their descendants, a recommendation that, to this day, has largely gone unfulfilled. In recent years, through the work of historians, activists, descendants, and through popular culture like the HBO series Watchmen, the story of Greenwood has finally been brought into the light. Archaeologists are still searching for the mass graves where victims were buried. Why does this story matter today, more than a century later? It matters because it's a stark reminder of the fragility of progress and the devastating consequences of racial hatred. It shows how prosperity in one community can be seen as a threat by another, and how quickly the rule of law can collapse in the face of mob violence. It's a powerful lesson in how history can be manipulated and erased, and why it is so crucial that we fight to uncover and tell these forgotten stories. The story of Black Wall Street isn't just about destruction, it's also about resilience. It's a testament to what a community can build against all odds. Remembering the Tulsa Race Massacre is not about assigning guilt. It's about acknowledging a painful truth in our nation's past. It's about honoring the victims, celebrating the legacy of Greenwood's builders, and understanding the deep historical roots of racial and economic inequality that persist today. By learning this history, we ensure that the flames of Greenwood and the stories of those who were lost are never forgotten again. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please share it so more people can learn the truth about what happened in Tulsa in 1921. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the histories we weren't taught in school.